House will come back to order. This House will come back to order. Mr. Clerk, would you ring the bell, please? Clerk will read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions. Clerk will read.
Recognizing formation and chartering of the Moore Middle School Leo Club. Recognizing commending Stephanie Johnson, 2016-2017 Georgia Principal of the Year. Recognizing and congratulating Beatrice Edge on the grand occasion of her retirement. Recognizing Elmer Stansel. Recognizing August is Adult Vaccine Preventable Disease Awareness and Improvement Month. Recognizing the class of 2016 inductees in the DeLucy Craft Laney High School Alumni Association Hall of Fame. Recognizing Martha Chalker. Commending Jean Greer, Chattooga County High School's 2016 Star Teacher. Commending Gail Jones, Tryon High School's 2016 Star Teacher. And for other purposes, that completes the reading of the privileged resolutions.
Is there objection to adopting the privileged resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. The chair recognizes Representative Strickland for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House disagree to the Senate amendment to House Bill 904.
Representative Strickland has moved that the House disagree to the Senate amendment to House Bill 904. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 904 by Representative Strickland of the 111th to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 34 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to employment security so as to change certain contribution rates and credits.
Chair recognizes Representative Strickland to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 904 was a Department of Labor bill that I carried that some other language has been added to that deals with another department now as well. So then we can get this sorted out in conference. With that, Mr. Speaker, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
On the gentleman's motion that the House disagree to the Senate amendment to House Bill 904, is there any objection? The chair hears none, and the House has disagreed to the Senate amendment to House Bill 904. All right, we're back on the rules calendar. We're back on the rules calendar. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 416.
Senate Bill 416 by Senator Cowser to the 46th, Harbison to the 15th, Harper to the 7th, and others Be it titled an act to amend Chapter 3, Title 35 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating the Georgia Bureau of Investigation so as to establish the Georgia Information Sharing and Analysis Center within the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. This bill has been assigned to the Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Jaspers to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Senate Bill 416 is a bill to codify the Homeland Security efforts in Georgia to the events that have happened the last few days that we know is all very important. Since 2011, the Georgia Information Sharing and Analysis Center, which we call GSACS, has been in operation after the 9/11 attacks in the U.S. It's a GBI-run intelligence task force that's comprised of state, local, and federal agencies to share terrorism threat information in real time. As a task force, all of its members' threat information is shared with public safety and stakeholders. GSACS currently operates under an executive order signed by the governor, and this bill will codify their actions in GSACS. The operation of GSACS will remain under the authority and operation of the GBI. The bill also changed the name of GEMA to the name of the Georgia Emergency Management Homeland Security Agency. That's my bill, Mr. Speaker. For no
You have no questions.
I yield the well. Thanks for your
Is there any
consideration.
objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 416 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 416. The ayes are 160. The nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 379. Senate Bill 379.
Senate Bill 379 by Senator Ginn of the 47th, Wilkins of the 50th, Harper of the 7th, and others, be titled an act to amend Code Section 48-8-3 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to exemptions from sales and use taxes. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Benton to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I present to you today Senate Bill 379. This bill started out as a small bill. It dealt with one fire department in West Jackson County. It also had a like bill from the House that traveled over to the Senate, and this is the bill that has made it this far. We also have added a couple of other bills to this Senate Bill 379. In Section 1, we have House Bill 51 that passed this House last year on March the 2nd by a vote of 152 to 1. In Section 3, we have House Bill 365 that passed this House on February 29th of this year, 160 to 0. The section that the bill started out as is in Section 4. It is only a small part of the bill now. It was House Bill 923. It passed this House on February the 23rd of this year, 159 to 0. And then in the last section of Section 4, starting on line 104 and finishing the bill, is House Bill 924 that passed this House on February the 29th of this year with a vote of 159 to 13. I would appreciate your consideration for this and pass this bill and send it back to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield for questions if there are any.
You do not have questions.
Thank you. I yield the well.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. There is an amendment offered on this measure. It is LC 430397 ERS by Chairman Powell. I'm sorry, it's a floor substitute. There is no amendment. Is there any objection to withdrawing the committee substitute? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is withdrawn. Is there any objection to adopting the floor substitute, which is LC 430397 ERS? Is there objection? Chair hears none. The floor substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 379 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 379, the ayes are 156, the nays are 3. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 199.
Senate Bill 199 by Senator Jeffries, the 17th, Mills, the 53rd, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2, Title 21 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to primaries and elections generally, so as to provide for definitions. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Government Affairs, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Gravely to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, today I bring to you Senate Bill 199. Some of you may have heard last election cycle, a man in Douglas County walked into his local precinct wearing plain clothes, except for he had a hat on that had NRA on it. He was told by the poll worker that he could not vote unless he went back to his car, removed his hat. The gentleman asked why he would have to remove his hat, and she said, well, you're not allowed to have campaign material in the polling location. He did so. He went back, but afterwards, he was allowed to vote. Afterwards, he went and sought legal counsel from Southeastern Legal Foundation, and they brought a lawsuit. The lawsuit was settled. The policy was changed in our county, and what this bill seeks to do is simply define what is considered campaign material. If you look on lines 17, 18, and 19, it says, starting with lines 15, campaign material means any newspaper, booklet, pamphlet, card, sign, paraphernalia, or any other written or printed material referring to a candidate's name who appears on the ballot, a referendum which appears on the ballot, or a political party or body which has a nominee that appears on the ballot in the primary or election. Campaign material is not considered a hat with NRA, AARP, NAACP, AFL-CIO. That is not considered campaign material because those organizations do not appear on the ballot. The bill also includes House Bill 980, which passed this House 157 to 0, passed unanimously. And then it also, what this also does, HB 980 allowed for a 2-day extension in local primaries where no one filed or registered for the election. And then there's some clarifying language in 94, 95, and 96, which simply allows local control in determining the amount of time of residency for local candidates not to exceed 12 months.
Do you yield?
Yes, sir, I yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Turner to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
So I see in lines 17 through 20 where it says if they were to appear on the ballot, what about candidates that name for write-in candidates whose name do not write on the ballot? Would I be able to put a T-shirt on that says write-in XYZ candidate and walk into a polling place under this proposed legislation?
Well, I would say under current law, that would not be allowed, because if you'll go to line 66 and 67, it says no person shall solicit votes in any manner or by any means or method, nor shall any person distribute or display any campaign material.
Thank you, sir.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Teasley to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
I have a tree on my desk that's been killed with comments from you. Could you speak to how the firefighters would feel about Senate Bill 199?
Well, if it was based upon a preponderance of whether or not you could vote, I'm sure they would be in favor of it.
Do you have another question if you care to yield?
I'll yield for one more.
Chair recognizes Representative Nimmer to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true, Representative Gravely, that what Vice Chairman Teasley was saying was he supports the timber industry?
I would say that's exactly what he's saying, Mr. Nimmer.
Thank you, sir.
Especially after the picture of you today, I would support the timber industry as well.
Gentleman, further yield.
Mr. Speaker, I think, Mr. Speaker,
I was hoping he was going to ask if I could wear my Pierce Lumber Company baseball cap when I go vote.
Mr. Speaker, that would be totally allowable under this bill.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Speaker, I ask for your favorable consideration on House Bill 199.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 199 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. I see. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of Senate Bill 199. The ayes are 167, the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair wants to recognize on the floor of the House a former member of this body, former State Representative Chuck Sims from Coffee County. We can give thanks that he did not bring a poem today. The clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 319.
Senate Bill 319 by Senator Jackson of the 2nd and Kirk of the 13th, Utterman of the 45th, and others, be titled an act to amend Code Section 43-10A-3 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to definitions relative to professional counselors, social workers, and others. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Regulated Industries, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Chandler to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is almost identical to 498 that passed out of this House several weeks ago. It has several parts, and the first part, and one of the most significant parts, is that it adds diagnosis to the scope of practice for the licensed professional counselor, except in the case of diagnosing neuropsychological functioning or conditions. It also requires that the composite board develop appropriate curriculum for continuing education for those people who are diagnosing in the fields of mental illness, developmental disabilities, and substance abuse. Another part of the bill, and another important part of the bill, is that it says that within the scope of practice of psychology is that of rendering opinions, diagnosing and treating mental illness and disorders, and organic brain disorders and brain damage, and engaging in neuropsychology and psychotherapy. And that is the basis of the bill. There is an amendment on the bill that was in your book, and it is simply an amendment because inadvertently left out on line 78, where you see professional counselor. We inadvertently left out clinical social worker or marriage and family therapist. And that's the bill in the amendment, and I'll be glad to answer questions.
You have a question if you care to yield.
I will yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Quick to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentlelady yield?
I do.
Representative Chandler, the amendment that you spoke about that's in the book, were clinical social workers and marriage and family therapists in the diagnosis portion of the bill that passed out of the House?
They have already been given the ability within their scope of practice, diagnosing. Those two fields have been. But they have not, so what this does is just say that they too must have continuing education training if they are diagnosing in the fields of mental illness, developmental disabilities, and substance abuse.
And do you further yield?
I do.
And could you tell me where in the code section they already have the ability to diagnose, the power to diagnose? Can you just point me there?
I cannot, but I know it's there.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Do you further yield?
I do.
Chair recognizes Representative Hawkins to your right for a question.
Does the lady yield?
I do.
Isn't it true this amendment makes this contiguous throughout the bill, that on line 33 that wording appears already in the bill?
Yes, that is true. Thank you.
Do you further yield?
I do.
Chair recognizes Representative Price to your right for a question.
Does the lady yield?
I do.
Is it not true that if someone were to diagnose something they weren't allowed to diagnose, they might not realize they're diagnosing it?
Say that again, Representative.
I'm concerned that by limiting the diagnosis ability, but giving a diagnosis ability, that interface might be so blurry as to not be recognized by someone now given an additional ability to diagnose.
Well, I would trust that the training, the continuing education training that would be required, both in the fields of psychology and for the licensed professional counselor, would take care of that kind of those kind of issues. And they have composite boards that they can go to and ask questions if there is some concern.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I think I will yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration.
Lady has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. There is an amendment offered on this measure by Chairman Dixon. It is AM 331644. Clerk will read the amendment.
Representative Dixon offers the following amendment, AM 331644, printed and distributed on your desks.
Is there objection to the amendment? Is there objection to the Dixon amendment? Chair hears none and the amendment is adopted. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute as amended? The chair hears none. The committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 319 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 319. The ayes are 145, the nays are 26. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Chairman Weldon for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll make a motion to insist on Senate Bill 64.
Chairman Weldon has moved that the House insist on its position on Senate Bill 64. The clerk will read the caption.
To be entitled an act to amend Code Section 15-11-2, Title 19, Chapter 10, and Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to definitions for the Juvenile Code, domestic relations, and vital records.
Chair recognizes Chairman Weldon to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the bill that does away with the administrative legitimation procedure. And the Senate, you know, they had that little slip of the finger. And we need to insist on this because we need to get this out of the way so we can have, we won't have the problems that we've had with the children not knowing, being legitimated by someone who's not their biological father. Thank you.
Chairman Weldon has moved that the House insist on its position on Senate Bill 64. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the House has insisted on its position on Senate Bill 64. This House will be in order. House will come to order. Chair recognizes Chairman Tom Weldon for a morning order. Chairman Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Seems like I was just here. But this isn't tagging on. This is taking off. You know, it's such a great opportunity and a great honor to work and to be elected by the people that send each one of us here. They're the people in our community. They're the people in Gainesville for Lee Hawkins. They're the people from Rockdale and right here in Atlanta for Pam Stevens. B.J. Pack there from Gwinnett. And you know, they're all around this state. And when I look out here, I see my state. I've been practicing this so I wouldn't do this, but You probably know me better than that. I thank God for the opportunity to have served with you and to have served in this house. I've heard Calvin Smyrie say it's not, you make a living what you get, you make a life of what you give. That's what's happening here. The talent in this house is burgeoning, and it's so impressive. From each one of you. I see my constituent back there in the back row. Stacy's, I claim her as my constituent, even though she's elected from Smyrna. And I love this job. This is a great place to be. It's an honor to be here. I'm withdrawing. I'm not quitting. I'm withdrawing my my qualification to run for the 2016 cycle for the 17-18 service period. And the reason I'm withdrawing is because the window of opportunity for me to have a relationship with Andy, Hank, Trey, and Renee, that's them 3 boys and 1 perfect child. It's like everything else. It's maturing and changing permanently. It's hypocrisy for me to serve as the chairman of juvenile justice and to see clear evidence of the greatest problem we have facing our state. And it's not mamas, it's not grandparents, it's fathers failing to parent their children. Thank you. It is, as a father, you have when I've had the opportunity to come down here, those 2 in my chair and those 2 in the window over there have had opportunities that I never had. And I'm sure that many of you had the same experience as B.J. Pack has also with his girls being here and his wife being here. It's truly an honor, but there are some things that just have to take priority. And you take priority. I want to say thank you to the people of Catoosa County. When I initially ran in the primary, I had 2 opponents, and fortunately and thankfully to them, I won without a runoff. I've tried to fulfill my duty to you, the people of Catoosa County. I'm looking forward to joining my fellow constituents so I can fuss at my state representative. When that skunk gets run over down the road from me and I can smell it, I'm going to call him or her. I want to particularly thank some of my constituents, Alvin and Pat Worley, and Johnny Coots. You know, the first time anybody had a fundraiser or a meet and greet, it was at Alvin Worley's Outback. You know, when they said the Outback, I really thought it was Outback Steakhouse in Chattanooga. I thought, man, are we going to have that out in Chattanooga? It's the Outback of Alvin Worley's house is what they meant. Since that time, I've had the opportunity and the privilege to be in the Outback, and it's quite a place. The Speaker's been there, the Governor's been there, many congressmen, and many of you. I want to particularly also recognize that my Super Senator, Jeff Mullis, I don't know if you've heard of him or not, but he has been instrumental in helping me be, if I've had any success, I'm sure much of it is, if not all of it, would be somehow attributable to the assistance and influence that Jeff Mullis has worked very diligently and vigilantly for the constituents that he and I both represent. And I thank you, Senator Mullis, for that. I've also had the opportunity to represent a part of Whitfield County with Tom Dixon, and he has been such a help to me. You know, my dad was all over me about, you know, how we fund education and how teachers need to be held accountable, and we all have to be held accountable, but Tom Dixon is the only person I know that could leave my dad kind of agape and saying, I guess I was wrong about that, when he explained that our public schools, they take the children that are sent to them and they can't send them back and say, oh, no, we ordered perfect children, so send us those perfect kids that are perfectly prepared for school. It's just like building a house. You get you ask for 10-foot 2x4s and grade A, and you don't get them, you send them back, you get grade A 2x4s. That's not the luxury that our school system, our public school system has. And I appreciate your leadership, Tom Dixon. Mr. Speaker, thank you for trusting me to serve as the chairman of Juvenile Justice. That has been an eye-opening, wonderful experience for me, one that I certainly did not deserve, and I very much appreciate your trust in me. Thank you for your friendship and your support through these years. Chairman Willard, you've trained me in parliamentary procedure and on almost every level of law and how to run a meeting, and God bless you. I think I've given you many opportunities to develop your patience and restraint. I want you to know you've made substantial progress during my tenure. I'm sure that you and Chairman Maxwell can commiserate about my examination of witnesses before our committees. And thank you for that. Thank you, Chairman Maxwell. You know, when I came here, Mike Jacobs was the subcommittee chairman in Judiciary, and I think my first three choices, or first three requests, I shouldn't say choices, my first three requests for a committee were Judiciary, 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 and then whatever he wanted me to do after that. Fortunately, I got one of my first three. But he put me in there with Jay Powell and Mike Jacobs, and we had this huge Kevin Levitas bill that was writing a constitutional amendment, and in addition to the covenants not to compete statutes. We worked a lot on that. Jay, Jay if you hadn't been on a committee with him or had to really work through a bill line by line, word by word, sentence by sentence, Jay is an intellectual gorilla in the room. It doesn't matter who he's in there with. And that was some of the best training I think I have. I think that's why Wendell put me in there, as he knew he had Jay over there, in addition to Mike Jacobs. There's so many people that I met during my stay here with you. B.J. Pack, wow. My time with you has been fantastic. You know, when I met B.J., I was assigned to be his mentor. And when I talked to him for a few minutes, I thought, man, I wonder if I can get him to be my mentor. I'm not kidding. Johnny Caldwell. What a great time we've had. It's been fun. And I don't care what he says, I don't drive as bad as he thinks I drive. I just have to make sure that we've been by the hospitality suite for about 20 minutes before I go driving. It makes things better. Ronnie Mabra, you know, we're down there in Judiciary and we're fighting it out. One minute, one bill, we're on sides together, and the next we're fighting each other. You know, it's been a privilege. And I appreciate what you had to say. That was fantastic today. Not on that bill we were arguing about a few minutes ago. Mary Margaret Oliver, I met you in 1994 when you were on the Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives. And some of your colleagues at that time were Ken Poston, who I worked for, Tom Cawthorn, a former governor, Barnes, and several other huge minds that were on that committee. And it has been an honor to work with you and to have the opportunity to sit in those seats that those wonderful men and women before us sat in. And I thank you for that. Andy Welch, we've been to war together. And I'd go again with you and Atwell and Allison, and there's not anybody in here, not one person in here that I don't feel like I could go to war with. And we have much more in common than we have in conflict. And that's the greatest thing about our state. We have more in common than with any other group of people anywhere close to this size than anywhere in the world. When the tornado of 2011 tore through Tuscaloosa, it went straight through Rome, and it demolished a lot in Rome, came right across, went straight through Ringgold, killed 9 people in Ringgold, demolished my building, and wrecked our town. That was a challenge. First thing I got in the mail was a note and a contribution, not to me or to my political help or to my political campaign, but to the people of Ringgold, from a lady on the front seat, her front row up here. Thank you, Penny Houston. You know, I had to chase her down to tell her thank you, and then I had to try to catch up with her after that to tell her thank you so that she heard me. The people in North Georgia know that, and now you do too. The next letter I got or the next call I got when the phone started working was from Vicki Williamson and Bruce Williamson. And they came and they did the same. And many of you came and gave your time and your efforts and your resources to help me in Catoosa County and Ringgold and Fort Oglethorpe pick up where we left off. And they would do that for you. And I'm honored to have served with you and for you to have shown the kindness that you've shown to me and to my family and to my constituency. I thank God for this opportunity. Thank you to Connie and Darrell Weldon. That's my parents, and you know, they're wonderful people, and they didn't deserve me, and you know, I don't know what to say about that, but God bless them. God definitely has a sense of humor giving me to them. Wendy? We talked about running 2 years earlier, but it just wasn't time. Without your 100% support, I would not have run. And I've had 100% ever since. Thank you. I love you. To Renee, Trey, Andy, and Hank, my #1 vote getters. Although they may not vote for me themselves on certain occasions. I love you, and Daddy's coming home. You better watch out. I'm bringing my powder with me. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a great house. Thank you.
House will come back to order. House will come back to order. Chair recognizes Representative Valerie Clark for a motion. The chair misspoke. Chair recognizes Representative Fleming for a motion. House will be at order. We're taking up some important motions now. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 547.
Representative Fleming moves that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 547. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 547 to be titled, an act to amend Chapter 3, Title 53 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to year support so as to change provisions relating to taxes and tax liens.
Chair recognizes Representative Fleming to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, House Bill 547 left this House last year on a vote of 168 to 1, overwhelming support. It deals with something called a year's support, which is a little bit of an oddity in Georgia law compared to the rest of the nation, but it deals with when there's a death and the spouse asks for something called a year's support, and what that does, it allows outside the will for a spouse to receive the homestead property, the home. And it has certain benefits to it, such as not having to pay property taxes for a year. It was designed in days gone by when there was significant poverty and trying to help people stay in their homes. A practice, I guess you would say, had developed over the years. Instead of just saving the home, people were, for lack of better terms, maybe abusing the policy and bringing in a bunch of different business properties. What we passed last year was to make it very clear on behalf of our probate courts and our tax commissioners that this only included the homestead, the home. The Senate watered that down a little bit. They said that you had a choice between the homestead or business properties, but you couldn't take both. So that is a positive step in the right direction in improving the law, and for that reason I would suggest, although the hour is late, that we go ahead and agree to the Senate substitute because it is a step in the correct direction. Mr. Speaker, I would be happy to answer any questions anybody in the House may have.
You don't appear to have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 547, all those in favor will vote aye, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the gentleman's motion. The ayes are 166, the nays are 0. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 547. Chair recognizes Representative Brockway for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 792.
Representative Brockway moves that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 792. Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 792 be titled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 4, Chapter 11 of Title 16. The official code of Georgia annotated relating to carrying and possession of firearms so as to authorize the carrying, possession, and use of electroshock weapons by persons who are students.
Chair recognizes Representative Brockway to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the bill that would allow people on college campuses to carry with them a stun gun. In Senate Judiciary, one amendment was made to it, and it was an issue that a number of folks had raised over here in the House. You see on line 15, they added any person who is 18 years of age or older or currently enrolled in classes on a campus. So that's the provision that was added to it, and I'm amenable to that, and I would ask that the House approve the bill as amended. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Speaker.
You do not have any questions.
Thank you very much.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 792, all those in favor will vote aye, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 119, the nays are 50. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute, House Bill 792. Chair recognizes Representative Blackman for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that we agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 866.
Representative Blackman has moved that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 866. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 866 by Representative Blackman of the 146th, Smith of the 134th, Abstration of the 104th, and others, be titled an act to amend Chapter 50 of Title 33. The official code of Georgia annotated relating to multiple employer self-insurance health plans so as to exempt multiple employer self-insurance health plans from premium taxes.
I think that probably some of you would like to hear the explanation of these matters. These are important propositions that are being brought up, and I can hardly hear the member in the well, and I'm closer than many of you. So I'm going to ask you to be in order. I know that as we get later, it's going to become a little more of a tumult in here, but this House is going to be in order and give attention to the members in the well. The gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill remains intact as it left the House, with the only change in this substitute came at our request to add that this become effective upon signature by the governor or become in law without such approval. Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
You have no questions? On the gentleman's motion that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 866, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 168, the nays are 0. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 866. Chair recognizes Representative Reeves for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute as amended to House Bill 874.
Representative Reeves has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 874. Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 874 be titled an act to amend Article 9 of Chapter 11 of Title 15, Title 16, Chapter 4, Title 24, and Code Section 42518, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to access to hearings and records.
Chair recognizes Representative Reeves to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, the changes to the bill are simple. Number one, the mandatory sentencing minimum for inmates was reduced from 5 to 2 years, and the maximum range for guards was increased from 5 to 10. This was not a mandatory minimum, it was simply the maximum range. These were changes that many of you wanted to see with this bill. And number two, Chairman Alan Powell's bill, which we passed, House Bill 1066, which allows the Commissioner of the Department of Corrections to have a designee sign a warrant for an escaped prisoner if the Commissioner is out of state, was added to this bill. I ask that we agree to this, and if there are no questions, I will yield the well.
You have a question if you yield.
I yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Wilkerson to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
I want to thank them for changing the mandatory minimum, but you had mentioned that was a request that we had. I believe the request, is it not true, was to actually remove the mandatory minimum?
Well, that was your request, yes, but there was also a request that the inmates and the guards' sentencing range be the same. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
You have another question if you care to yield?
I'll yield for one more.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the House Transportation Committee, Chairman Coomer, to your right for a question.
Gentleman yield.
I do.
I'm just trying to understand from that discussion back and forth. So are the mandatory minimums still in the bill or are they out of the bill?
They are in and they are at 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
I will yield the well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 874, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 105, the nays are 67. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute, House Bill 874. Chair recognizes Chairman Taylor for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Make a motion that the House agree to the Senate amendment to House Bill 879 as amended by the House.
Chairman Taylor has moved that this House agree to the Senate amendment to House Bill 879 as amended by this House. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 879 to be entitled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 6, Chapter 2, Title 20 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia annotated relating to elementary and secondary education programs so as to provide for the issuance of a seal of biliteracy for high school graduates.
Chair recognizes Chairman Taylor to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My amendment just returns House Bill 79 to its original language as it left this body with 168 yes votes. I ask for your favorable consideration on this education and workforce development bill. HB 879 encourages students to pursue proficiency in multiple languages, honors the skills they attain, and prepares them for careers in the global marketplace. And with that, I'll take any questions, Mr. Speaker.
Do you yield for questions?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Welch to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Is it not true that I have on my desk an amendment from the Senate that's from Senator Ligdon III, and that it adds what I would term a loophole for children to be excused from taking the mandatory testing requirements of the state?
That's correct, and what this amendment does is strips that language back out. Basically, the premise behind that was, you know, if you're going to test out for proficiency in a language, you shouldn't be excused from the test.
Okay, thank you.
Do you yield for another question?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Terry Rogers to your right for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
I will.
Is it not true that in large measure, part of the economic rebound that we've seen in the state of Georgia is because of the recruiting of international businesses, and that this is simply nothing but another tool to help us to keep that momentum going?
Thank you for the question, and I agree, sir. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I will yield the well.
On the gentleman's motion, is there any objection to the adoption of the House amendment? The chair hears none, and the House amendment is adopted. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate amendment to House Bill 879 as amended by the House, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the gentleman's motion that this House agree to the Senate amendment to House Bill 879 as amended by this House. The ayes are 169, the nays are 5, and this House has agreed. Chair recognizes Representative Broderick for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that this House agree to the Senate substitute to HB 926.
Representative Broderick has moved. You can step out of the well.
Thank you, sir.
I'll put you back in. Representative Broderick has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute, House Bill 926. Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 926 to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 4, Title 26, the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to pharmacists and pharmacies so as to provide for the regulation of certain facilities and entities involved in the wholesale manufacture and distribution of drugs.
Chair recognizes Representative Broderick to explain his motion.
The motion is that I agree with the substitute to 926, which this House passed unanimously, and it just clarifies some of the language in the bill. If there are no questions, Mr. Speaker,
You have no questions.
I'll yield the will. Thank you.
On the gentleman's motion that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 926, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 133. The ayes are 133, the nays are 35, and this House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 926. Chair recognizes Chairman Rice for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House insist on its position and a committee of conference be appointed for House Bill 205.
Chairman Rice has moved that this House insist on its position in disagreeing to the Senate substitute to House Bill 205 and that a committee of conference be appointed. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 205 by Representative Rice, the 95th to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to driver's licenses so as to require a driver who refused blood alcohol concentration testing as required by implied consent laws or an offender convicted of DUI with a blood alcohol concentration of more than 0.15 grams to install and maintain an ignition interlock device.
On the gentleman's motion that this House insist on its position in disagreeing to the Senate substitute to House Bill 205 and that a committee of conference be appointed. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears none. The House has insisted. The chair appoints as a committee of conference Chairman Rice of the 95th, Chairman Golick of the 40th, and Representative Hightower of the 68th. Chair recognizes Representative Strickland for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House insist on the House position on House Bill 904 and that a committee of conference be appointed. Close enough.
Representative Strickland has moved that the House insist on its position in disagreeing to the Senate substitute to House Bill 904 and that a committee of conference be appointed. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 904 to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 34 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to employment security so as to change certain contribution rates and credits.
Representative Strickland has moved that this House insist on its position in disagreeing to the Senate substitute to House Bill 904 and that a committee of conference be appointed. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears none. This House has insisted, and the chair appoints as a committee of conference Representative Strickland, Representative Fleming, and Representative Kelly. Chair recognizes Representative Perkle for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recommend the House insist and appoint a conference committee for House Bill 876.
Representative Perkle has moved that the House insist on its position in disagreeing to the Senate substitute to House Bill 876 and that a committee of conference be appointed. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 876 to be titled an act to amend Chapter 6 of Title 4 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to livestock dealers and auctions.
Representative Perkle has moved that this House insist on its position in disagreeing to the Senate substitute to House Bill 876 and that a committee of conference be appointed. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears none, and this House has insisted on its position, and the chair appoints as a committee of conference Representative Perkle, Representative Nimmer, and Representative Quick. Chair recognizes Representative Duncan for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that this body insist and we name a conference committee on SB 258.
Representative Duncan has moved that the House insist on its position in disagreeing to the Senate substitute to House Bill 258 and that a committee of conference be appointed. Clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 258 to be titled an act to amend Code Section 48-5-311 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the creation of county boards of equalization duties, review assessments, and appeals.
Representative Duncan has moved that this House insist on its position in disagreeing on Senate Bill 258 and that a committee of conference be appointed. Is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none. This House has insisted on its position, and the chair appoints as a committee of conference Representative Duncan, Chairman J. Powell, and Chairman England. We're going to be in recess for a little afternoon recess here, or as Representative Williams said earlier in the session, short recess. What is a short recess? 15-minute recess. Reconvene at 3:40.